basic premise of the video was me explaining that I don't mention I have a webcam business ever, and that I'm Mr. Rich and I have this nice car and I go on dates with girls. And sometimes when I say I have a webcam business, some of them want money and they want to work for me. That's the basic premise of it.
Right. I'm glad to hear that you're not proud of the video. And I think that that's one of those things where I say that people don't allow you to grow up from things that you've done or said in the past. And this is obviously when you were operating a webcam business, you're talking about.
And that's the whole thing about the human experience. We're supposed to grow, right? And we're supposed to make mistakes and we're supposed to learn from them and we're supposed to evolve as people. And I'm certainly not proud of the video. When I say I'm not sorry for what I've done, I don't mean it in a, I would do the same things again. I don't mean it that way. I mean that at the time I was a lot less knowledgeable and I was younger and I made some mistakes. And just like I'm sure Jay-Z would never sell crack again.
Right.
Exactly the same reason I would never make a stupid video saying something so stupid again. I also could have never predicted the fact that I was going to become one of the most famous people on the planet.
Right.
I didn't see that coming. And if I did, I would have been a lot more careful with what I said and how I said it. And I do think that it's part of every person's journey to make some mistakes and learn from them and grow from them. And I kind of find it interesting that if I was a reformed drug addict, there'd be no problem. If I was a reformed murderer, there'd be no problem. If I was a mafia boss and I'd sit here and I'd killed 3 people and we were doing an interview and I was like, yeah, I used to kill people. I've done my time. I'm out of jail now. I get less flack than if I made a video talking about dating when I used to have a business that did webcam than I currently get, you know? So all I can do is understand that I was a younger man. I did the best I could at the time. And I was trying my very best to survive in a very harsh world. And I understand now that a lot of the way I said things, I certainly shouldn't have said them that way, but none of it is criminal.
Right. And it, again, has no bearing on your case today, but I want
There's literally no bearing. And it's conflation.
It's being circulated without, like, people think that video was shot last week.
Correct. And that's what's so good, because it's good to mention it, because people are trying to conflate them. Because in the current case against me, there's no case. Everybody understands there's no case. We're now in a situation where if the legal system's completely fair, then the case is over. So what they're trying to do is they're going to conflate with old videos of mine and they're going to try and muddy the waters and gaslight. And I will say that I am unhappy those videos exist. And I will say I wish I never made them, but I won't say that I'm sorry, because at the time I did the best I knew how to do.
And I think that's important for the young kids that are following you, especially the young men, to know. Like I say, I always hope that I talk about the mistakes that I made, and I probably wouldn't even categorize them as mistakes. It's just things that I did. And if I could go back, of course I wouldn't do it. Hindsight's 2020, but it's important for them to hear that. I'm not proud of that. Obviously, I'm not proud of it.
And that's why I never push them to the world. And that's why I never, propagate them in any way. Unfortunately, there's a weaponized attack against me where they still exist. And that's why I do so good to talk against them. I think that if you want to tell kids not to do drugs, you usually have a reformed drug addict to stand up and say, don't do drugs. I was a drug addict. It was a mistake. And I think that gives you a degree of credibility. So for me to sit here and say, be a lot more careful, one, with the way you say things on the internet, especially. 2, be a lot more careful with your interactions with women as a whole, especially in light of the Me Too movement and all these other things. Be very respectful. This is a small clip. If you watch the video in its entirety, I actually talk about extensively about how you don't want to make a woman feel pressured. You don't want to pick up a rape charge for no reason. If she feels upset or sad, make sure you get her a taxi home. I talk about all these things in the same video. So this is still the worst part of a very long form video taken out of context. However, I just think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from it. And yeah, if I have to be slightly embarrassed and a little bit taken aback by them so I can teach people the lessons, then I'm going to teach people the lessons. And the basic premise is I was explaining how I have a webcam company and how it affects my romantic life. And that was how it was all encompassing and went together. And I think when I made the video, I got like 28 views.
Yeah. And now it's being circulated.
And I'm being told I'm the worst person in the world by people who pretended they've never done anything wrong for the last 10 years. And also there has to be a degree of time. I like to think there's a statute of limitations. Like, how long are you going to hold?
They will for the rest of your career.
I'm sure they will. And it's fine. And that's fine. But I mean, it's just like, okay, 10 years ago, a decade.
Yeah, they're going to keep making you answer for it in every capacity. I've seen that. God forbid you misspeak, you miss a word while you're saying something, they will circulate it over and over again. That's just the world of social media.
For me, what I feel is I don't feel guilty about them, but I do feel embarrassed because I don't feel like the way I spoke about women or the way I spoke about romantic relationships is my current view on romantic relationships. I think I've certainly matured. I was a young, brash, arrogant guy. This is what happens when you have a young kickboxer who's beating everyone up, who's making a bunch of money from the streets. I was a young, brash, arrogant guy, and I spoke in a way I perhaps shouldn't have spoke. And I'm sure if Jay-Z makes a song today, he won't speak about women and crack and drugs the way he used to speak about women and crack and drugs. It's just the reality of life. And you have to grow and you have to take the embarrassment which comes from growing. So I will certainly sit here and make sure, I think the whole world understands that that's not my message. That's not what I'm teaching young boys today. the young boys who are following me today have no interest in these videos and don't watch these videos unless they're pushed by haters. And I think that overall, I'm a net positive for the world. I think that men being so disenfranchised is, I want to say something quickly about the British school system. The English school system has attacked me, and now they're trying to put me, they've spent billions of dollars trying to remove me from schools because young boys were running around saying, what color is your Bugatti, and repeating my sayings. I don't think I can really truly be held responsible for the fact that young boys repeat a saying, especially one that's not particularly aggressive. I think that shows that the young boys are looking for a hero and someone to look up to, and I feel like I'm filling a gap. And that's why I understand it's so important I say very good things and teach very good things. And I don't think I would have learned so much good if I hadn't been involved to a degree with the dark and the bad. I don't think there is light without dark. A lot of my lessons and a lot of the messages I give to the world come from the fact that I grew up in one of the worst areas of the Western world, surrounded by drug dealers, surrounded by real pimps doing real bad things, surrounded by broken homes. I learned all these lessons. And if I had never had those experiences and never grew up in that scenario, how could I be a person who's now teaching young men, disenfranchised young men, the realities of the world? How could I? We talked earlier about having a sheltered life. A sheltered life doesn't allow you to be the kind of man who can teach. So yeah, I spoke in a way I shouldn't have spoke. Yeah, I regret the video completely. Have I ever hurt anybody? No. Has any of the girls who are being mentioned in that video come forward with anything other than defense of me? No. Nobody was actually hurt. It was just very brash, very arrogant, very bad delivery, which I regret.
I'm going to tell you something right now. If level with you as a human being, if I had to watch clips of me 10, 11 years ago, I would be red. Even the black girl go red. I couldn't even look. I wouldn't even want my husband to see it. So I feel your embarrassment.
Well, this
that's why a part of me when they were regurgitating these clips, I was like, this is so unfair. It's so unfair to say I'm upset. And by and large, the stuff that you're saying to young men, even if there are certain things I don't agree with, although I found it interesting that you said that peacocking is natural with men, because I think you're right. Now that you say it, I'm just a woman and I don't understand it. Yeah. But by and large, the stuff that you're saying today is not that. And so I think it's really, you got to be really careful if you're convicting somebody on who they were a decade ago.
Completely. And it's reformed drug addicts that will tell you not to do drugs, and it's reformed
alcoholics that will tell you not to drink
alcohol.
Yeah.
And I lived a life. I'm not going to sit here and try and, I think part of the reason actually, and it is part of my image, Top G is the name for any of the adults who are watching it. Top G is what they call me, my nickname. But part of it is the fact that I grew up in a bad area. Mm-hmm. I can fight. I have this money. I'm in this big compound in Romania with armed guards. And there's that degree of it. There's that nastiness and there's that rough to the edge, which makes my message so interesting for the young boys to watch. But that's because I came from a very rough life. And yeah, all I can do is apologize for the delivery, but I will not apologize for trying to do the best I could at the time in the scenario I was in.
Growing up.
Completely.
And I think that that's one of the things that sucks about being a public figure is every single moment that people are looking at it under a microscope. And I always say, I want to give people permission. I always say I took the most liberal route to conservatism that there ever was. Yep. And so I'm just not so quick to judge people.
And also I like to think, and this is one of the things I do say, if the most advanced forensic detectives on the planet with years of effort, if the worst they can drag up is me talking about women in a slightly derogatory way, I'm kind of happy with that. And I'll be honest, because I scroll Twitter and I see all these liberals who attack people all day end up getting ousted for child porn or this or that, real things. And I'm like, thank God I have no skeletons for real, So that's the worst version of me that anybody's ever going to see. And it was a long time ago and I learned my lessons from it. And I do my very best to teach the lessons I learned, just like you said, to help people avoid going through the hardest way to possibly learn a lesson. And that's the reality of it. But that has no bearing on my current case. And I think that's what the confusion in my case is currently. People think that my case has something to do with that, even though they're completely unrelated events.
Right. And that's what I'm trying to clarify in talking to you, because I've realized that there's a lot of conflating going on. And a lot of it is because America, I feel, is just now being sort of introduced to you, whereas in the UK, you've been around for a while. And there was one, and I'm only familiar with your UK brand because of my husband. So I know that you've been big in the UK circuit for a very long time. And there was an old video that surfaced of you spanking a woman with a belt.
Yep. Tell me you love me. Say it like you mean it. Say it like you mean it. You message one other guy ever again, whether we're together or not again. You understand me?
This obviously has made it through the UK media for years. And I know what that is based on my understanding of what happened with Big Brother when you were on Big Brother. But Americans are just seeing this video in a long montage of awful Andrew Tate videos. So I want you to explain to them what that was.
Sure.
And again, this is another example of when the woman has already spoken out and clarified that this was not her being abused, but
absolutely. Yeah. The woman's already come forward instantly after the video. She came forward and made a video and said, look, this is between me and Andrew, and he never hurt me, and I love him very much. And this is something that personal that happened in the bedroom.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say something about the video that's been released recently about me and my ex-boyfriend, Andrew Tate. Andrew is my still great friend. What you guys saw on the video, it's just what we used to do. It was just pure game. He's a great guy. He would never hurt anyone unless he's fighting. And I just wanted to let you know that this is a huge misunderstanding, because I heard he got kicked out from the house because of it, which I found very unfair. It's because it was just pure game. It's just what we used to do.
And it's actually interesting because when I got arrested, even recently, even though me and her are no longer together, she was also doing videos in my defense. She made a very recent video a few months ago saying, once again, very nice things about me.
He is not a human trafficker. He would never rape anybody, and he would certainly never ever human traffic anyone either, including his brother. They would never do such thing. I am just so shocked, and I'm so fed up with all of these lies.
And you're right about public life, having your dirty laundry or your life thrown out there to the world. It's kind of interesting. And it's interesting how fast people throw stones, because I know how clean my life is compared to most people's lives. And I know that just from conversations I've had at dinner tables. I know from just dinner table conversations. You talked earlier about dinner table conversation people have in couples, etc. I've been sitting around in very private rooms with very rich people, and I've been in very important places and also some very low places. And I've heard people talk, and I'm like, if your life was on display like my life was on display, it would be a real circus. I mean, imagine you could be the son of a president. Imagine if their life was on display, and you could find out some really interesting things. So me personally, yeah, these things are the same old regurgitated things from 10 years ago that have been previously explained.
That was also, I was going to say, can you date that video? When that video,
I must have been, how old was I? 2015, maybe 2014,
okay,
a long time ago.
Right.
And I think the best defense for all of these things, personally, I don't think that anybody should take my word for it. I think the best defense for all of these things are the voices of the woman directly involved.
Right.
We say, believe all women, right? That's what we say, isn't it? Okay, well, you don't have to listen to a word I say or believe a word I say. If you think I've done something wrong to a woman and the woman stands up and goes, no, I love him, that's garbage.